You don't notice the moment it happens. There is no confrontation, no rejection, no open disrespect. Just a quiet shift. People start listening differently. Their attention thins. Their responses shorten. What once felt engaged now feels processed. You are still present, still speaking, still participating, yet something essential has been removed. You have been downgraded without notification. This is the invisible demotion. It doesn't come from failure, it doesn't come from incompetence. In fact, it often happens to people who are articulate, thoughtful, and well-meaning. That's what makes it confusing. You replay conversations, searching for the mistake, the wrong word, the misstep. You assume you said something incorrect. You assume you didn't explain yourself clearly enough. But clarity was never the problem. Respect doesn't vanish loudly. It dissolves quietly when your presence stops registering as consequential. When people sense that nothing changes whether you are taken seriously or not, they unconsciously stop doing the work of considering you. Not because they dislike you, not because they intend harm, but because the mind is efficient, and it only allocates seriousness where weight is detected. Once that weight is gone, everything you say lands lighter. Ideas that should create pause slide by. Observations that once sparked interest now receive polite acknowledgement. You are not opposed, you are neutralized. This is where most people make the mistake of trying harder. They speak more, clarify more, justify more. They try to earn back seriousness through effort, unaware that effort is often the very signal that confirmed their demotion. The more you push to be understood, the more you reveal that being understood matters too much to you. And when something matters too much, others instinctively assign it less value. The demotion deepens. What's unsettling is that people around you may not even be conscious of the change. They would deny it if asked. But behavior doesn't lie. They interrupt more easily. They defer to others without explanation. They move forward without checking your reaction. Your presence no longer alters the room. This is not a social failure, it is a psychological one. Because seriousness is not granted based on what you say, it is granted based on how much psychological cost others associate with ignoring you. When that cost drops to zero, respect evaporates. And this leads to the second illusion. Most people believe that being heard means being taken seriously. It doesn't. Being heard is passive. Consideration is active. Someone can listen to every word you say while already deciding that none of it requires adjustment on their part. They nod, they respond, they agree, and then they proceed exactly as before. That's when confusion sets in. You spoke clearly, you were reasonable, you made sense, and yet nothing moved. Because seriousness is not about comprehension, it's about impact. It's about whether your presence forces recalibration. When you are taken seriously, people don't just understand you, they account for you. They pause, they weigh, they anticipate your response before acting. When that stops happening, explanations become noise. This is why repeating yourself never restores respect. It only confirms that your words lack gravity. Seriousness doesn't come from insisting, it comes from being the kind of presence that makes dismissal feel risky. Most people never see this line. They assume respect is something you earn through consistency, intelligence, or good intentions. So when it disappears, they double down on those traits, accelerating the very process that erased it. The invisible demotion is not reversed by effort. It is reversed by a shift in how you occupy space. And until that shift happens, no amount of speaking will make you matter again. People don't decide to take you less seriously. They detect it. The signals are subtle, almost polite. So subtle that you rarely recognize them as signals at all. They feel like normal behavior, reasonable behavior, even admirable behavior, and that is why they work against you. The first signal is overexposure. When you are always available, always responsive, always ready to explain or clarify, your presence loses gravity. There is no tension around you, no pause, no cost. People know they can access you whenever they want, so they never feel the need to hold you in mind when you're absent. You become psychologically replaceable. This has nothing to do with kindness. It has everything to do with weight. Scarcity creates pressure. Pressure creates attention. Attention creates seriousness. When you remove all friction, You remove the need to account for you. Your availability becomes an assumption rather than a privilege, and assumptions are invisible. This is why those who rush to respond are rarely respected. Speed communicates urgency, and urgency communicates dependence. It tells others that engagement with them matters more to you than your own internal positioning, even when your intentions are good. The signal is received as weakness. The second signal is permission-seeking. This one hides inside politeness, soft language, careful phrasing, unnecessary disclaimers. You frame your presence as negotiable. You subtly ask whether it's acceptable for you to take up space, and the moment you do, the hierarchy is set. People do not consciously punish permission-seeking. They simply stop adjusting for it. If you present yourself as optional, others treat you as optional. Not out of cruelty, but efficiency. The mind prioritizes what asserts itself without apology. Once this signal is sent, your ideas are no longer evaluated on their merit. They are filtered through your positioning. Even strong points feel weak when delivered from a lowered internal rank. Authority is not carried by content, it's carried by posture, psychological posture. The third signal is emotional leakage. When people can predict how you will react, they stop considering you. Predictability removes risk, and where there is no risk, there is no need for respect. If your frustration is obvious, your excitement immediate, your disappointment visible, others learn how to move around you without consequence. This is not about emotional suppression, it is about containment. When your internal state spills outward too easily, it gives others leverage. They learn what affects you, what unsettles you, what pulls you off center. And once that map exists, your presence loses its edge. You become manageable. Serious people are not emotionally empty. They are emotionally unreadable. Their reactions are delayed. Their expressions are measured. Not because they are hiding, but because they are not compelled to reveal. That restraint creates depth, and depth creates seriousness. What ties all of these behaviors together is the same underlying message. You are easy to process, easy to access, easy to predict, easy to dismiss. None of this happens because you are weak. It happens because you are open, responsive, accommodating. You adapted too fast, explained too much, reacted too clearly, and the world responded by lowering the psychological cost of ignoring you. Once that cost drops, respect cannot survive. This is why people often feel confused when they are overlooked. They did everything right. They were reasonable, available, honest, cooperative, and yet they became invisible. Because seriousness does not grow in comfort, it grows in friction. When you remove all resistance from your presence, others stop orienting around you. They don't feel the need to pause, and without pause, there is no consideration. This is the uncomfortable truth most people never confront. Being liked is easy. Being taken seriously is not. Seriousness requires that your presence introduces uncertainty. Not chaos, not conflict, but the sense that ignoring you has consequences, that moving forward without accounting for you creates risk. As long as your behavior signals disposability, no amount of intelligence or effort will correct it. People will continue to extract value from you without granting weight. They will listen without considering, acknowledge without adjusting. And the more you try to fix it by giving more of yourself, the deeper the signal is reinforced. The demotion is not reversed by doing more. It is reversed by becoming harder to process. Competence feels like it should be enough. It feels fair, logical, earned. You do the work, you think clearly, you deliver results, and somewhere beneath that effort is the quiet expectation that seriousness will follow, that people will notice, that your position will rise naturally as proof accumulates. That expectation is the trap. Because competence does not create leverage, it creates usability. When you solve problems without consequence, your value is absorbed rather than acknowledged. Results disappear into the system. Credit diffuses. What remains is a role, useful, reliable, replaceable. Respect does not form around usefulness. It forms around absence, around the discomfort others feel when you are not there. This is why the most capable people are often the least considered. Their competence lowers the perceived risk of ignoring them. They will adapt, they will compensate, they will make it work. And the world quietly learns that nothing breaks when they are sidelined. The same illusion applies to intelligence. Intelligence without authority feels harmless. It entertains rather than pressures. Insight becomes commentary instead of consequence. People enjoy listening to sharp observations when those observations demand nothing of them. Agreement is easy when agreement changes nothing. This is why intelligent people are praised and then ignored. Their ideas are admired in isolation, detached from action. Their clarity becomes a performance rather than a force. Without authority, even truth feels optional. It can be acknowledged without being obeyed. And authority does not come from being correct. It comes from the sense that your understanding carries weight beyond conversation, that your interpretation shapes outcomes, that ignoring your perspective introduces risk. Without that perception, intelligence is decorative. Then there is niceness. Niceness is often mistaken for maturity, for strength, for moral elevation. But psychologically, niceness lowers friction. It reduces the cost of interaction. And when interacting with you feels effortless, others deprioritize you without realizing it. This does not mean cruelty earns respect. It means boundaries do. Niceness rushes to smooth tension. It reassures, it accommodates, it removes discomfort before it has time to settle. But seriousness requires the opposite. It requires allowing tension to exist long enough for others to adjust. When you absorb discomfort for everyone else, you signal that you will carry the weight, and people let you. This is why nice people are often trusted but rarely deferred to, appreciated but not followed, liked but not taken seriously. Their presence feels safe, but safety does not create hierarchy. Competence, intelligence, and kindness are not flaws. They become liabilities only when they exist without psychological positioning, without boundaries, without internal authority. The mistake is believing that value automatically translates into status. It doesn't. Status emerges from perceived consequence, from the sense that your presence alters the environment in subtle but undeniable ways. When you are competent but endlessly adaptable, intelligent but non-consequential, kind but boundaryless, you communicate the same thing. You will adjust. And when people believe you will adjust no matter what, they stop adjusting for you. That is why competence alone never works. It solves problems. It does not command seriousness. Until something in your presence makes dismissal feel costly, your abilities will continue to benefit others more than they benefit you. And the world will keep using what it does not have to respect.
Respect does not begin in other people. It begins in placement. Before anyone reacts to you, they register where you have placed yourself internally, not through words, but through pacing, silence, stillness, and the absence of urgency. This internal hierarchy leaks outward whether you intend it or not, and once it is detected, others align to it without effort. Most people place themselves low without realizing it. They wait to be acknowledged, they rush to respond, they adjust quickly. These behaviors feel cooperative, but psychologically they signal readiness to yield. And when you yield preemptively, you remove the need for others to account for you. Seriousness emerges when that internal position shifts. Not upward in arrogance, but inward in certainty. You no longer monitor reactions to calibrate yourself. You stop scanning for approval. Your presence stabilizes, and stability forces recalibration. People don't decide to respect you, they find themselves doing it. This is where silence becomes decisive. Silence is not absence, it is pressure. When you don't immediately fill space, others feel it. They become aware of their own movement, their own words. Silence interrupts momentum. It creates a pause where hierarchy is renegotiated. Speed communicates need. Delay communicates choice. When you respond instantly, you imply that engagement with others outranks your own internal timing. When you pause, you signal that your attention is selective. This changes how people approach you. They become more deliberate, more precise, more careful. Silence also removes predictability. If people cannot anticipate your reactions, they must account for you. They slow down, they consider. Uncertainty introduces cost, and cost is the foundation of respect. Not fear, not intimidation, but the quiet awareness that ignoring you carries unknown consequences. This is why seriousness is often mistaken for coldness. In reality, it is containment. You are no longer broadcasting your internal state. You are no longer leaking emotion in real time. Your reactions are measured, not because you are detached, but because you are not compelled. Compulsion is visible. Control is felt. The next threshold is immovability. Serious people do not adapt quickly. They allow others to adjust first. This does not come from stubbornness, it comes from coherence. When your internal position is consistent, the environment reorganizes around it. When you constantly bend, the environment ignores you. Adaptation signals flexibility. Stability signals authority. When you stop reshaping yourself to fit every interaction, friction appears. And friction is uncomfortable, but it is also clarifying. It forces others to decide how to relate to you. That decision is where respect forms. Most people fear this moment. They fear being misunderstood, excluded, disliked. So they rush to smooth the friction away. In doing so, they erase the very condition that would have elevated them. Respect requires that you tolerate being misread temporarily, that you allow silence to stretch, that you let others feel the weight of adjusting. This is the psychological threshold most never cross, because once you do, something irreversible happens. People stop testing you. They stop pushing. They stop assuming access. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence no longer collapses under pressure. Seriousness is not asserted, it is detected. And once detected, it restructures every interaction that follows. There is a moment when effort drops away, not because you gave up, but because you no longer need to push. The struggle to be taken seriously ends the instant your presence stops asking for permission. Nothing external changes at first. No announcement, no reaction. Just a subtle recalibration in how people orient around you. You are no longer trying to be understood. You speak less, but your words land heavier. You explain less, but people listen more carefully. Not because you demanded attention, but because your presence no longer collapses when ignored. Dismissal now carries friction, and friction changes behavior. This is the shift most people miss. They believe seriousness comes from asserting dominance, projecting confidence, or signaling importance. It doesn't. Those are performances. Performances invite testing. What changes everything is internal alignment. When your actions, timing, and restraint come from a stable internal position, others sense it immediately. You are no longer reacting to the room reacts to you. Conversations slow down around you. Decisions pause slightly when you enter them, not out of fear, but awareness. You are now accounted for, and being accounted for is the core of respect. This is why you don't need to correct how people see you. Once the shift happens, perception follows automatically. People adjust without explanation. They stop choosing their words more carefully. They stop assuming access. They stop expecting accommodation. You didn't demand this. You removed the option to ignore you without consequence. The relief is quiet. You stop proving. You stop clarifying. You stop chasing acknowledgement. And in that stillness, something decisive settles. You are no longer someone who hopes to be taken seriously. You are someone for whom seriousness is the default. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped positioning yourself beneath the room. From that point forward, respect is no longer something you seek.
It is something others sense and respond to before you ever speak.